Hello and welcome. Welcome. I am so glad you are here. Today's case, man. Today's case. First off, this is for grown-ups. This is grown-ups only. We're going to be talking about a pretty darn ugly case. I want to thank Patty Olson, one of my viewers, and I think she's in the live chat right now, for bringing this up. And Patty, did we meet in court a couple of days ago, like on Wednesday? There was somebody who came up and said their name, but I am a little hard of hearing, and we were in a big courtroom with other people talking. Will you tell me if that was you? I I suspect that it was, which is kind of cool. Uh, no sound. I hope everybody can hear me. I'm seeing that it's there. No sound. Hey, Bree. Couple of other. Is everybody okay on sound? Yeah, we're good. All right, good. Okay, good. All right. Um, okay, so Patty, if you were in the comments, you guys remember you put in GF so that I can see your comment. But I think it might have been you that I met in court about just I was there covering court a few days ago. I think that was on Wednesday. Anyway, if that wasn't you, it was another delightful Patty. And thank you to Patty Olson for bringing me this case. It's good. Okay, everybody, we're good with sound. We're good with sound. Awesome. Thank you all. Okay, we don't have a picture of our victim, and I'm glad we don't. We don't need to be crazy. Well, we just don't need to identify this person. We don't. It's okay that we don't know who this person is. We have some description of this person. But the suspect in our case, we're talking about this woman, a man named Kimberly Sullivan, 56 years old. Kimberly Sullivan is accused of keeping her stepson, who currently is the age of 32, in basically imprisoned in his room. Sounds like since he was 12 years old. Sounds like he was 12 years old when this started. And it just blows me away. So we're going to take a look at a couple things. I've got Google Harley 62. Her makeup is a crime in and of itself. I wasn't going to say that, but I agree with you. Yeah, and I'm going to keep her photo up here. I know that sometimes we're like, hey, we don't want to look at these people, but some people, they just need looking at. All right? They need looking at. So we're going to keep her up. Anyway, so she's 56 years old. We have some stuff to look at. We have a press conference that I want to watch. We have a affidavit of probable cause. Got a couple of quick articles that we can go over, and we've got some maps as well that we're going to go over. And I'm just trying to decide where to start. I think the best place to start, Patty says, no, I never met you, but thought this would be a great case. Okay, Patty. It was another Patty. A delightful woman. I just didn't catch her name because it's very hard to hear in those giant courtrooms. You know what I mean? Okay, let's start. I'm going to bring you over here to Acrobat, but I'm going to start over here with this is an article that came out yesterday morning on People. It's one of those articles that cites another article, but we're gonna have a check. Okay, Connecticut woman was arrested this week after a man identified as her stepson told police he started a house fire at their shared residence to escape decades of her alleged abuse. Kimberly Sullivan, 56, is accused of holding her 32-year-old stepson captive since he was 11, the Waterbury Police Department said in a statement. Gonna open up that statement. Well, we're going to take a look at, the Waterbury Police made this statement on Facebook yesterday. But what we're going to do is we're going to actually go to their press conference, okay? All right. So she was taken into police custody on Wednesday, March 12th, so 2 days ago. The suffering this victim endured for over 20 years is both heartbreaking and unimaginable. We're gonna let him actually speak for himself. Let's just quickly look at this. After the Waterbury Fire Department helped put the flames out in Sullivan's home on the evening of February 17th, the 32-year-old told first responders that he had intentionally set the fire in his upstairs bedroom, stated, "I wanted my freedom." And that person has not been identified. We only have pictures of Sullivan. So she was arraigned. Okay, he lit a fire with some hand sanitizer, some paper from a printer, and he lit the fire while he was locked in that room from the outside. He lit the fire very well knowing he could die, but he had been locked in the room for 20 years, and for 20 years he'd been trying to get out of that room, prosecutors said during the arraignment. Okay, let me, this one is my favorite. This is the lawyer. Okay, so Sullivan's attorney, Ioannis A. Kaloidis, denied any wrongdoing on his client's behalf and called the allegations outlandish. She was blown away when she heard these allegations, the lawyer told reporters. She's adamant they are not true. This did not happen, and we look forward to being able to vindicate her and show that she's done nothing wrong, said the lawyer. Now, you guys know I love good lawyering. And they have to give a very good defense of their client. That is their job, but that's kind of laughable. I mean, did the fire department see locks on the outside? Did the police see locks on the outside? Okay. Yeah. These allegations seem to be based on the words of one individual and one individual alone. She had a bond set at 300 GER, but check this out. She was able to post bail. Kimberly Sullivan, 56, posted the $300,000 bail set by a judge during an appearance at Waterbury Superior Court on Thursday morning. According to Connecticut court records and her lawyer, I can't pronounce his name, I'm sorry. Prosecutors argued that Sullivan should be at least placed on house arrest or be made to wear electronic monitoring. I'm a little sensitive about electronic monitoring right now, but I kind of feel like that would be a good thing. Should she post bail, but the judge declined to make either of those conditions part of her release. Sullivan will have regular check-ins while out on bail, as is standard, and is due back in court on March 26th. So one of the things that kind of strikes me on this case is it happened on February 17th, and she wasn't arrested until the 12th. So the judge must feel like she's not a flight risk. I mean, I feel like there probably should be monitoring on this, but since it was almost a month and she didn't leave, that's probably why the judge was kind of feeling that. And then the rest of it, we already know. Okay, so before we get into the affidavit of probable cause, let's take a look at the house, shall we? I want to take a look at the house with you a little bit. You can see the little red marker right here. This is the house that he was locked in at 2 Blake Street. Get that kind of in the center here. Let's take a look at this place because it is quite secluded and kind of remote. That looks like the garage. That looks like 2 Blake Street right there. Because let's go back to Let's go back to this view. Hide that. Yeah, that looks like a yard surrounded by trees, and this looks like number 2 Blake Street, though Google Maps calls that 16 Blake Street, but I kind of feel like that is the house. Let's go back there again. We're going to go to the driveway. Yeah, that is a garage back there, and then he was up in there somewhere. And when you look at this, you can tell that it is a little run down. It's that says 0. That says 2. TW. Okay, that says 2. So that is the house. Let's come back around over here and see if we can look at it from around here. Can we see in the backyard there's a shed? Looks like that's probably a window. Hard to say. Come back around here. I want to kind of come over here onto Sunnyside Street. Look into it from here. I wonder if we can get... No, that's not an alleyway. That's somebody's driveway. Okay, so, it is very much... Where am I going? Where did I go? There we are. Very much kind of very hard to see in that house. But there are neighbors. There's one neighbor. That house looks like it's maybe 10 or 15 feet away. And, of course, neighbors on other sides. This driveway going back to this detached garage would have a view back into that house. But, I guess what I'm saying is I can see how somebody might be able to get away with this if neighbors weren't on the lookout for it. And I don't know how many of you, do you live in neighborhoods where you don't know your neighbors? It makes me wonder if they were kind of recluse in that house, or if she was like, howdy neighbor. She, everybody knew her and just couldn't believe that there was a 32-year-old imprisoned inside that house. On my street, there are 12 houses on both, including both sides of the street. There are 12 houses on my block, and we know everybody, and we interact with one another a lot. Sometimes there will be like Christmas parties and open houses and things like that we will do together, birthday parties. We all know each other. So in my neighborhood, if somebody did that, it would be surprising. It means that they were very good at hiding their crimes. I think it's more likely that this is the kind of neighborhood where people don't really talk to each other. Just kind of, hi neighbor, walk around, say hello, wave to them as you drive by, pulling out of your driveway and pulling out of the neighborhood, that kind of place. Because, it would be shocking to me if she was able to keep up an imprisonment without neighbors knowing. I'm curious what your thoughts are before we go to the press conference. Let me head on over here to your comments here. Give me a second. Okay. Jeannie, it is a little off topic. I don't mind you asking at all because it's a case that I deeply care about. I am in continuous contact with Ellen's family. I don't have any updates that I can share with you yet. I am still waiting to hear what the medical examiner's office is doing there. Yeah, he's 32. It's pretty crazy. Jess says, Gavin, they didn't have a garage door until after 2012, according to Street View history. Jess, I need you on my team. You are a good investigator. You need to reach out to me. Okay, Jess, I'm begging you. Okay, go over to my website. You guys know where it is. GavinFish.com. There's a link down below. Go to my website, Jess, click on that. I would like to be in touch with you. You are so good. You are so good at picking out little details, and I love it. And I would love to have you on my team. So please, please do that. Getting back over here to your comments. Let's see. Cassie says, Gavin, she should be charged with attempted murder. It's a miracle her stepson was still alive, being so malnourished. Yeah. We're going to get into this, but he weighed like 68 pounds when he was found. Just saying, I did this exact same last night. They did leave her out, let her out on bail on 300 gur. Dom's mom, Gavin, forget flight risk. It's about justice for this poor guy. She shouldn't be able to walk free ever again. Gavin, is it just me, says Fairy Link, or is having bail in the situation very loose interpretation of law? No, bail is long codified into the U.S. justice system. It's not, trying to think, it's not part of the Bill of Rights, but it's certainly, I'm trying to think, is it part of the Bill of Rights that, I don't think, is bail part of the Bill of Rights? It might be. Yeah, it's the Eighth Amendment. Yeah. It says excessive bail should not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishments inflicted. So yeah, it's part of the Bill of Rights. Took me a while to remember that. In fact, I didn't remember it. I looked it up, but is it a very loose interpretation of law? No, I don't think it is. I think it is. I mean, think in terms of if you had been arrested and the entire internet, all of your community immediately says you're guilty, and so the judge, bowing to public pressure, goes $25 million or no bail or something like that. You definitely don't want that to happen to you, right? Now, the being, let's call it, generous on bail. And by the way, the founding fathers knew this, and they objected to England's behavior in just throwing people in jail, right? It basically amounted to extortion. I mean, this is one of the complaints that, what is his name? I just remember Guy Fawkes, but the Robert, I can't remember his name, but the leader of the gunpowder plot, that was one of his main things, is that at the time it was religious persecution. The King of England was Protestant, and Catholics were being persecuted by the government, being thrown into jail with excessive bail. They couldn't ever get out. So, yeah, we don't want that to happen. I still think that probably there should have been some electronic monitoring here. And like I said, maybe it's because it's been a month that she's been loose and she did show up. Yeah, look at you, Nikki, the Eighth Amendment. You're better than I am. Came right to you. Lily Benjamin, I am correct about Jess. Thanks, Lily. She's awesome. I vote Jess for Team Fish. Cooler by the Lake says the jails would be overflowing even more than they are already if reasonable bail wasn't available. Yeah, great comment. Oh, here's a comment that doesn't have GF in it, but I want to address it. It's from Dom's mom, who I love. Your comments are always welcome. She inflicted cruel and unusual punishment on him. Yes, but we do not inflict cruel and unusual punishment on others, even criminals. And it's one of the things that is actually striking when you go into what, like last Wednesday, I was at a sentencing hearing and plea hearing day in Clarion County, Pennsylvania. And so it was like all day long sentencing hearings and plea hearings. These are people that have, some of them, not all of them, some of them had criminal histories as long as my arm, man. They were, and yet the judge, the prosecution, they treat the defendants with dignity and respect. And we definitely, I'm not implying, Dom's mom, that you disagree with this. I'm just using your comment as, I guess, it just kind of piqued my interest in this whole idea that this whole Schadenfreude idea that we want to deliver back the pain that they have caused somebody else, and we just don't want to do that as a society. We're doing the right thing the way that we're doing it here. But man, I deeply appreciate that comment, and I'm not implying that you believe otherwise. A couple more comments before we go. Oh, Jess, no, wrong one. Right there. Jess sent the message. Awesome. God Secretary says, I do believe that the police officer said that he was held in a place much worse than a jail cell. Yeah. He was found, Becca, because he purposefully lit fire to the house, hoping that somebody would come and rescue him. Dom's mom says, it just doesn't seem right. I get what you're saying, though. Her day will come and her justice will be served. Yeah, Dom's mom, you're amazing. Okay, let's go over here, shall we? This is a press conference that was held yesterday. Here we go.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to
You might have to turn up the old headphones.
As you all know, on February 17th, around 8:40 p.m., Waterbury Police responded to 2 Blake Street on a report of a fire. Officers and fire investigators immediately realized there were some grave concerns about some of the conditions in the house. There were 2 occupants of the house, one being Kimberly Sullivan, the stepmother of the male victim. Officers and fire investigators quickly realized that there was a room in the house that appeared to have locks on it from the exterior portion of the house. They began to speak to the male victim, who disclosed that he was being held captive in the house for an extended period of time.
By the way, those kind of clicks and stutters are part of the video. It's not my system this time.
Approximately 20 years. The investigation began from that point. We worked closely with the State's Attorney's Office, Maureen Platt, as well as Assistant State's Attorney Don Thurkelson, because frankly, what was being reported was unfathomable to us at that point in time. Through those investigative meetings and through search warrants, we were able to seize physical evidence and conduct interviews and dig up some more information that corroborated the victim's story. This investigation, as the mayor points out, continues, is very open and very active. We were able to obtain arrest warrants for Kimberly Sullivan. She was arrested yesterday. She was arraigned in Waterbury Superior Court.
Thanks,
She's currently being held on a $300,000 bond. At this point, I'll open the floor up for any questions.
The biological father, we've learned that he recently left the home, and our lawyer is saying that we need to look deeper into his part in all of this. When it comes to the investigation, is he being held accountable at all?
The biological father is deceased and died in January of 2024. Prior to his death, he was wheelchair bound from some medical conditions.
Okay. Also, it was reported to the school system that this boy at the time, now 32-year-old man, he was starving, he was asking other kids for lunch. I mean, is this a failure on the school system that this matter was not taken more seriously?
So we're doing some background investigation. There are 2 incidents that we had within our computer system of dealing with that address and with the family back in 2005. One was a request from DCF to do a welfare check at the location because children that the victim was familiar with hadn't seen him and they were concerned about him. Officers went to the house. The house was clean. It was lived in. They spoke to the victim at that point in time, and there were no cause for any alarm or any conditions that existed that would have led officers to believe anything other than a normal childhood and a normal family existence was occurring. But that was reported back to DCF, and that was the last that we were involved in that particular investigation. We were called back to the house in the latter part of April
Welcome,
by
Leanne.
the family who wanted to file a harassment complaint against members of the school district, saying that they were continuously reporting them to DCF and felt that they were trying to get the family in trouble and have the family investigated. We have no further information about where that went, other than there was no proof provided by the family that there was any type of harassment that was occurring. You know, as far as the school district's concerned, we are looking at those records now. We're working with DCF to look at records that they may have from previous investigations, and that's part of the ongoing investigation.
But Chief, if people were filing complaints, even if it was with DCF, continuously, as the family, I guess, alleged, you know, was there more contact from DCF, and do you know anything about how that would have gone?
So the only contact we had was back in April of 2005 when we were notified to conduct that welfare check. And again, we're looking for those records now to determine where that investigation may have gone, but there was no further reported information to the Waterbury Police Department.
So when you had an officer go out there that first time, you're saying everything looked normal, it looked like a normal childhood, but the school district, the principal told us that the child looked really small, malnourished, was drinking from a urinal at school, was taking kids' food. So, I mean, with all that information, the officer still concluded that the child was safe at that time?
Well, the officer didn't have that information. So this former principal is now disclosing all this information, and I believe in the news clips I've reviewed that he was making calls to DCF and other agencies. Waterbury Police were never notified by this particular principal about
Well, I
those
hope
conditions.
he's right about that.
So this is all information that is coming out now as this case unfolds.
I believe he said he called police, but you have no record of that.
Well, I believe he's wrong if that's what he said, because there is no record of it.
Can you talk about, you said that there was some evidence that corroborates the story.
I'm
of
sorry,
the
real
gentleman.
quick. That is a pretty bold statement of that police officer or police chief to say that never happened. And he did walk it back a little bit. I believe that never happened. There's no record of it. But listen, if there's anything that I've learned over the years, that while there are systems in place to keep good records, people in general are bad record keepers. And so, you know, if the police were, you know, if that principal made a phone call and called the Waterbury police that day, and I don't know, somebody was having a bad day who picked up the phone and just decided not to write it down, that would be against policy, but it would also be understandable that a human being having a bad day might do something like that. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just saying it's a pretty bold statement to just go up and say, no, we were never contacted. Especially we're talking 20 years ago. Right? Pretty bold.
Can you talk any more about what that is, or how do you go about corroborating a story like this that's so extraordinary?
Right. So there's some physical evidence that was seized from the house that does corroborate the fact that that room did have exterior locks on it, and a number of different styles of exterior locks. As was explained during an interview with the victim throughout the years, it appeared that the locks increased in security levels as time progressed, and obviously he became older and maybe a little bit stronger. So that's certainly one component.
By the way, and Jess, thanks for this comment. You guys have to watch the documentary. I think it's on Hulu, about the Ruby Franke, Jody Hildebrand thing. You have to watch it. It is a must watch. But yeah, the whole family is what Jess says knew. Listening to this press conference makes me think of what would have happened if Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrand never got caught. Yeah, that 12-year-old boy he was emaciated. The little girl's head was shaved. And I'm talking about Ruby Franke's like House of Horrors, but yeah, you guys must watch it. Okay, now back to the regular scheduled programming.
And there's other components of the fire investigation that are part of the evidence package as well.
And I'm sorry if you said this, but were these the only two individuals living in that home?
Yes, there were two siblings. They were in and out of the home, but they have since moved out.
So say DCF had all this information, the principal's saying, they don't share any of that with police?
You're going to have to talk to DCF about what their protocol is on when they share information with police. DCF does work closely with police departments and provides a lot of information to police departments in a number of different ways. I don't know what their protocol is on when they share that information, so that would be something that they would have to respond to.
Chief, how's the victim doing now? Obviously, some serious conditions. We've read about the PTSD and depression. What can you share about how the victim's faring?
Right, so obviously he's got a lot of mental health issues that he has to deal with at this point in time. There are a lot of physical conditions that he's working on as well. I mean, here's an adult that was 5'9" and 68 pounds. There's some apparent orthopedic issues. The room was very small. Honestly, when I read about it and talk to the investigators and overlook the interviews, it was worse than the conditions of a jail cell. So there's a lot of physical therapy that he'll have to go through. There's a lot of healing that he'll have to go through mentally. And I can tell you this: our investigators, and I'll specifically point out Detective Steve Brownell and Detective John Pace, who were the lead investigators in this particular case, but all the investigators, the entire Criminal Investigations Bureau, has been very supportive of the victim. They took a collection up and bought him some items to try to make life more comfortable, some clothing and some books and some things to kind of get him along.
I would imagine that whole community would probably rally behind this victim. I would hope so. Goodness sake.
Way as he goes through this process, but our plan is to continue to support him. He's going to need a lot of support as he travels through this and tries to figure out how to navigate what has occurred and what the future holds for him.
Chief, I think a lot of people are wondering, where are his other relatives? Did no one else see this man for 20 years that they were able to, say anything, report anything to police? Was his stepmother the only person in his life? You said he had two siblings. Where is everyone else? Where are all the relatives?
So the backdrop is being formed, and this is again why the.
Hey, I'm sorry. I'm interrupting about the Ruby Franke thing, but here's the thing. Here's the thing about the Ruby Franke thing. And this is tangential. It's important though, guys. How we've talked. We've talked quite a bit lately on the channel about coercive control. Pretty much ever since I became hyper aware of it because of the Micah Francis Miller case. This whole idea that they're it's just outside of the realm of possibility in my own life. Didn't recognize it, but this whole idea of coercive control, is alleged that J.P. Miller had this control over Micah Francis Miller. He did the kinds of things like taking away her ability to communicate with others, taking away her ability to buy things, taking away, just making it very, very difficult for her, right? And these are coercive control mechanisms that are used by people that are just very, very good at this. Well, Ruby Franke was very controlling and had everybody in her life completely under, it was like she had them hypnotized. Some of them still are. You've got to watch it just for that. And they do a very good job of respecting the children. Other than there are two that participated that are adults. The other four were protected in the documentary. They did a terrific job of protecting them. So Aida, check it out. It is very, very, very good.
Investigation continues. It appears that there was a very controlling situation going on regarding the victim's condition, his whereabouts, his connection with other family members, other people in the community, other friends. Information was very guarded on what was released and you know, when he was able to see other members of the family and other members of the community. And I think that, you know, I know, you know, from information provided in the interviews that there was a level of fear on retaliation on what would occur if information was released or help was provided to the victim by family members.
Were there any injuries as a result of that
That's
fire?
awesome, paper chaser.
Smoke inhalation, to the best of my knowledge, I don't know if there's any long-term effects from what occurred at the fire, but on scene, he was treated for smoke inhalation.
How did he get out of the house? Did he get out of the house on his own, or did firefighters have to rescue him?
He was assisted out of the house.
Will you be identifying him at any point?
You know, that's a great question. Not at this time, and I don't really know when, if at all.
But imagine for first responders.
Where's the mother?
The mother has not been involved in the victim's life,
From the beginning?
pretty much. From all accounts, around 2 years old.
The suspect is
Thank
denying
you.
all the allegations through her attorney. Has she said anything about how her stepson would be 68 pounds, for example?
Kimberly Sullivan refused to talk to us immediately.
Finally,
Get a picture of the door lock that was taken at the.
oh my goodness! Finally, a smart criminal. She refused to talk. Oh my goodness! Hallelujah! I mean, I honestly, I would rather criminals be dumb, but I think there's enough evidence here. I think there's direct evidence. I think there's forensic evidence. I think there is circumstantial evidence. I think that there is enough that they're going to be able to get her. But she didn't. She lawyered up. Good for her. Let's see. We've got about 7 minutes left on this.
I'm 100% certain that we do. I'd have to confer with the state's attorney if we were going to release any information like that at this time.
Does Kimberly Sullivan, have any prior criminal convictions?
No prior criminal history with us here at the police department.
Neighbors
she's
were
good at
telling
what
us,
she did.
That if you had knocked on the window, they would have helped him. Were there any other attempts besides his fire to try to get him some help?
No, again, I don't, you know, from what we've put together so far, no, and that's because of a fear of retaliation. I mean, he, in his room, to relieve himself, right, had this elaborate mechanism that he created where he would urinate in a bottle, and he had straws connected to the bottom of the bottle, and he found a hole in the storm window frame that he was able to put these straws through. And he did that because the storm window itself wouldn't open up, and he was fearful that if he broke that storm window or tried to open it up, that there would be some retaliation. So, you know, I'm certain.
And imagine at 5'9", 68 pounds, malnourished, mentally just abused. I mean, it's amazing that he came to his senses clearly enough to say, "I'm lighting a fire." It's amazing. Like, this is a hero. This guy is his own literal savior, right? That's it's amazing. Yeah, but at 68 pounds, if he broke something and made something mad, I mean, she looks like she's 68 pounds, but healthier. She looks like she's that way for other reasons, right? Like, oh my goodness. So just sad and infuriating.
Not a psychologist or psychiatrist, but there's a lot of nuances to people that are victims and held captive. And I think that, you know, there's a lot of work that needs to be done with this particular gentleman in that area to really determine all the impact and all the effects that this long-term condition has really
He'll have physical
Brought him.
ailments for the rest of his life
I'm
because of
thinking
this.
you haven't had a case like this before.
I mean, his
33
mental issues for sure, right? But he will have physical issues forever.
years of law enforcement, this is the worst treatment of humanity that I've ever witnessed, right? I mean, honestly, when we first started talking about it, we really couldn't believe it. It took a lot of convincing amongst ourselves to just really accept what was going on, and it's really hard to talk about still. I mean, it's shuddering to think that someone would treat any person, let alone a family member or someone that was entrusted as a guardian or a parental figure in this way.
Mayor, just can you also share your personal thoughts and reaction just knowing something so disturbing happened in this community?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, it's just unfathomable that anyone could treat someone this way, as the chief said, especially within the relationship that they had.
I think this must be a district attorney or something. I don't know who this is.
It's devastating, and we're going to make sure that the systems are working into the future to see what might have happened 20 years ago when this may have been reported. But at this point, it appears that this was just really an isolated sense, and that they were locked in there all by themselves. And through fear and intimidation, she was able to keep it secret all that time.
So when you're talking about the future and other children and other families out there, I mean, if there's no protection, and the kids are told to lie about being fed, I mean, what happens? Like, are they going to stay in these situations like he did, or?
Well, there's limits, I would think, to what you can do. We can send people out to check and look at it. I don't know what it looked like when the officer walked into the house in 2005, what the child looked like. That's 2 decades ago. And
Yeah, and that's a valid point. I mean, there should be limits. We don't want to give absolute power to anyone. Even well-meaning people, we don't want to give that much power to. But where is that limit? That's tough.
So, it's hard. We can send people out. We can do the checks. We can make sure that teachers, and administrators are looking out for children, notice some of the telltale signs. I think we've come a long way as well in 20 years over looking for these things and being able to report them. Requirements of what has to go to DCF have changed over that time. So I think we can continue to do it. But can I tell you that it will never happen again? I don't think anyone can tell you that, because there's a lot of things that go into this that, can help keep it secret.
Yeah.
Where was she arrested in Southington?
I don't know. I could get you that information. I'm not sure exactly where she was arrested in Southington. And it's important, to piggyback on the mayor's response to your inquiry. If you see something, say something. I know it's a cliche, and we talk about it all the time, but of all the great work that the media and press is doing now on this particular case, and talking to relatives and neighbors and some school district people. I know some have said that they've made calls, but some have said they haven't, right? So if things are peculiar, it's important to notify the police department. We will certainly look into that information and take the appropriate action. And it may take more than one time, depending on the circumstances we find when we get there. And we know that, through history and through our work with servicing agencies, that victims of domestic violence especially are oftentimes reluctant to come forward. And, we encourage people that are victims of domestic violence to find the fortitude to come forward, and we're here to help. We really are.
That's
in
tough.
this situation, though, it seems like, according to the police report, that his life became worse because someone reported it. And after that second DCF visit, the mother pulled him from school.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, the retaliation is what it appears.
But you still would encourage people to...
I would. I mean, because you're not going to break the cycle any other way. I mean, unfortunately in this case, it seems as if an 11-year-old was taken extreme advantage of, and at that time, it's very tragic that occurred, but it will never stop, right? And this gentleman suffered for 2 decades because of that. It's easy to Monday morning quarterback, but I think it's really important to never lose hope and to continue to report incidents, especially if you're a victim of neglect or a crime.
You can tell that he's
Was he in the room
worked up
all
about
the
it.
time?
He's angry
Because
about
there
it.
were some reports
He's
that he was
staying
in
chill.
the backyard doing chores.
He would be released from the room anywhere from 15 minutes to a couple of hours every day. You know, there were some indication during the interview that although his dad didn't do him too many favors when the stepmother wasn't around, he would stay out of the room a little bit longer.
A news conference
that's-
there underway on a
That's probably good enough. All right. Wow. My goodness. This is a case, man. Hey, I'm going to get to a couple more of your comments, and then we're going to get into the affidavit of probable cause if you want to stick around. But since we've been talking about different legal, I guess, different parts of the law and trying to know the law as a non-lawyer, which is a very difficult thing to do, I wanted to show you something that I posted to Patreon today. This isn't specifically regarding this case, but since it was brought up, I thought I would put it. I posted this about an hour ago. I've been working here in Western Pennsylvania to get some public records from the district attorney's office, and have had, it has been one roadblock after another, after another, after another. It's been going on since January. So I wrote up kind of a quick little write-up on what's been going on for the purpose, and then I attached all my receipts, right, so you guys can see them there. But for the purpose of trying to help all of us understand why transparency in government is super important, and why each time you hit a roadblock, you should look at that as an opportunity to learn something new. I can't tell you how many times as a local reporter, and that's all I am, I'm just a local reporter, I've been told no, only to be told yes on the third or fourth or 18th time that I ask. So, and there are places like Texas, Florida, Idaho, Utah, Minnesota is one of those where it's very, very easy to get public records. There are still places here in the United States where it's very difficult. So if you're a patron of mine, go check out kind of what I've been working on, and then you can take a look at some of the things. I redact them so that you don't have addresses and stuff like that, but you can see like this is a letter that I wrote to the district attorney today. So anyway, I just thought that I would point that out if you're interested in learning how to go about obtaining public records, especially when it's in a place where they don't like to give them up. Okay, let's head on over for the last bit of our time together, back over to Acrobat, and let's take a look at this criminal complaint, the warrant affidavit, and so forth. Okay, so this is just, this is the charging document. She's charged with assault in the first degree, kidnapping in the second degree, unlawful restraint in the first degree. Additional counts, intentional cruelty to persons, reckless endangerment in the first degree. And then here's the arrest warrant. Bail was set at $300,000. I think everything in blue here is the judge's signature. So part of that bail was no contact with the victim in any manner. And I'm just kind of yada-yadaing this. This is just boilerplate stuff that they hadn't filled out. Affidavit below. Okay, so let's get into this affidavit. We can learn a lot here. We might be here a while, guys, so, stay. This is going to get a little dry. Stay at your own risk, I guess, I'm going to say. All right, paragraph 1 is all about the affiant, Detective Brownwell. Paragraph 2, that in the following affidavit there is a victim of DV whose identity will be omitted. The victim shall be referred to as male victim 1, MV1, along with his identity and address and the location where he is being treated shall be omitted as well. That on February 17th, 2025 at approximately 8:42 p.m., the Waterbury Police Department received a complaint for an active fire at address omitted. We know where it was. I showed you guys. Waterbury, Connecticut. Filed by Kimberly Sullivan. Blah, blah, blah. Officers Martinez, Nicolaj. I don't know. Officers Martinez and Inzitari were dispatched to the scene, as well as the Waterbury Fire Department. Upon arrival, the fire department was already on scene and began working on the active structure fire. Officer Inzitari observed that the fire department made entry into the residence and removed a party later identified as MV1, who was born in 93, who was immediately brought to AMR ambulance for medical treatment. Officer Inzitari reported that MV1's stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, was standing outside and was uninjured. The FD worked the fire and were able to extinguish the fire, which appeared to be mostly contained to the second floor. Multiple rooms on the second floor had heavy fire smoke and water damage from the incident. Other areas of the house sustained smoke and water damage from the incident. Officer Inzitari checked on MV1 in the ambulance, where he was being treated for smoke inhalation. Upon viewing MV1, the officer observed that he was extremely emaciated. His hair was matted and unkempt. He was very dirty, and his teeth all appear to be rotten. MV1 was conscious and alert, although he was having difficulty speaking due to the smoke inhalation. The victim reported to the officer that he intentionally started the fire in his room on the second floor using a lighter, hand sanitizer, and paper because he wanted his freedom. And I don't mean to make light of this, but what is the movie? Mel Gibson. Hold on. Why am I just blank on this kind of stuff all the time, but what is that called? Anyway, where he's being tortured to death and all he has to do is beg for mercy, and he cries out freedom, right? That is like the deepest desire of his soul. That's what this young man must have felt, that he didn't care anymore. He didn't care about his life. He just wanted freedom. Now, I know it's not a perfect metaphor. It's not a perfect match, but you know what I mean? He just wanted his freedom. I bet you guys are telling me what that movie is called, because you're awesome. It's called Braveheart. Thank you. Good job, Mooney. Okay. He stated that he had been locked in his house. Actually, I don't need these anymore because I'm not going to be watching any more video. Okay. He stated that he had been locked in that house his entire life. The victim stated that he had been held captive at the residence since he was approximately 11 years old. He specifically mentioned that his stepmother, Kimberly Sullivan, keeps him locked inside his bedroom as there is a lock on the outside of his bedroom door. The victim was transported to St. Mary's Hospital for treatment before being transferred to facility name omitted as his condition worsened, and he was listed as being in critical condition due to smoke inhalation. Oh, I've got the headphone head going on. All right. Detective Pesci was Hey, another fish. That makes me happy. Detective Pesci was contacted to respond to the fire scene as he is a police fire investigator for the city. Upon arrival, he was updated by on-scene officers of the victim's condition related to the fire and his general appearance. Detective Pesci then introduced himself and spoke briefly with Kimberly Sullivan, who was on scene in a vehicle with a daughter and the daughter's boyfriend. Sullivan reported to Detective Pesci that she didn't know what happened and that she woke up to the smoke and went to MV1's room. Sullivan stated she went to his room and saw a large amount of fire in his doorway. Sullivan stated the victim was saying something about a TV and that she was screaming at him to get out of the room. Sullivan stated that she guessed he ran through the fire because he did end up outside the room. Detective Pesci asked if MV1 was diagnosed with any medical conditions, and Kimberly stated he has a lot of problems but isn't diagnosed with any conditions, as the victim's father was against using doctors. Because doctors are mandated reporters. Sullivan stated that she has brought the victim to a psychiatrist a few times and that the victim has mentioned hurting himself in the past. Oh, you don't say. You don't say that he might want to do that to himself. My goodness. Detective Pesci asked Sullivan if the victim was locked inside his room, and she stated that his door is not locked and that he has free reign of the house. While the FD were still actively on scene dealing with the fire scene, Fire Department Inspector Sevilla and Detective Pesci did a cursory walkthrough of the address omitted in Waterbury to ascertain the origin and cause of the fire. Inspector Sevilla located a burn pattern on the floor of the second floor bedroom, consistent with the fire being set to that location, as there were various burnt up papers and burnt debris. This location is consistent with the room that was described to be the victim's room on the second floor. While fighting the fire, members of the FD had moved items around the second floor bedroom. FD uses the term overhaul and removed the door to the room. Pesci observed that there is a slide lock on the outside of the door frame, which could be used to secure a door closed from outside of the room. Furthermore, the removed door from the room has a latch that appears to match up with the location of the slide lock. During the early part of the investigation, Pesci reached out to Sullivan in an effort to further interview, let's bring up her picture, her in relation to the fire and the victim. Kimberly refused to meet with Detective Pesci and stated that she has spoken with an attorney and will not be speaking to police. Again, finally, I would much prefer that she was a dumb criminal, but finally. Avail yourself of your rights, people, okay? Once the victim had recovered to a point where he could speak to with investigators, 2 interviews were conducted by detectives. The first was February 21st by Pesci, and the second was by Detective Brownell on March 6th. Both interviews were conducted at the medical facility that the victim is recovering. Each interview was audio and video recorded utilizing Waterbury Police Department body-worn camera. In the 3 hours that the victim was interviewed, he provided details of the evolution of his life over the past 20 years that amounted to a life of captivity, abuse, and starvation. MV1 was asked what his earliest memories were of being locked in his bedroom, and he stated that his earliest memories started around the age of 3. The family was living on address omitted at the time, and he recalled being hungry, which led him to sneak out of his room at night and get food and fluids to drink. He stated that when the wrappings to the food he ate were eventually discovered, he began to be locked in his room. He stated that at the time it was only during evening hours. He recalled drinking water from the toilet at the time due to the fact that he was only getting about 2 cups of water per day. He then recalled how the family moved to the address omitted before preschool. Wow. It's not 20 years, guys. It's not 20 years. It's 29 years. He stated that when he was in the 4th grade, he was permanently pulled out of school due to the fact the school was attending contacted DCF based on what he was doing in school. He stated that by this time in his life, he was always hungry, so when he was at school, he would ask others for their food, steal others' food, and sometimes eat food out of the garbage. This resulted in DCF responding to the home on 2 occasions. When they were there, he was told by Sullivan to tell them that everything was fine. This is heartbreaking. 4th grade. Do you remember what you were doing in 4th grade? Dude, I think about this kind of stuff. Fourth grade was the first year that we lived in California. Mrs. Henderson was my teacher. She was amazing. I had made new friends that are friends to this day. My life was spent with going to school, riding my bike, playing wiffle ball, going out into the fields, playing in the creek. It was the 80s, and so kind of free reign. I was kind of a free reign kid, like come back when the street lights come on kind of a situation. Happiest possible childhood. I'm telling you, it was the best childhood that could possibly be done. Meanwhile, not at the same time, of course, this man was looking for food in a garbage can. No, this little boy was looking for food in garbage cans. He was stealing food from others. He was always hungry, drinking from the toilet. And when DCF did come, his stepmom just said, "Tell him everything's fine." And then they pull him out of school. Victim stated that he was provided worksheets for a short period of time, but the skill level never advanced and no one was teaching him anything. So this kid has a third grade education. That's what he has. He stated that he always had a lock on the outside of his door. It evolved from a chain lock to a padlock and eventually a slide bolt lock. Not only did he demonstrate to Detective Pesci how it operated, but the lock was also observed from photos obtained from search and seizure warrants executed at the residence. Victim added that when he was first moved to the address, he was in an actual bedroom locked in, but was then moved to a smaller room, in quotes. This area was observed during the execution of the search warrant and can be described as a back storage space on the second floor of the residence. So this isn't like the standard 10 by 10 of the homes built around like the time this one appears to have been. Let me go back over here. It's this house. Where are we looking? We're looking... What do you think that's built in? The 50s or 60s? Something like that. So these rooms are all going to be a little bit on the small side. 10 by 10 standard rooms. No, he didn't get that. He got a back storage room. He stated he was only there for a short period of time, eventually being moved to the smaller room. This is where he has been since the age of 12. This space that the victim was locked in was a back storage space that measured approximately 8 feet by 9 feet. The space also had angled ceilings, making the space that much smaller. Speaking with a doctor, she stated that MV1 stated during conversation that the space had no heat in the winter, no air conditioning in the summer. I think I understand the kind of room that this is. We have a room in our house. Our house is it's an historic home. It's way earlier than the house that we're talking about in this case. But when this house was originally built, there was staff. It was a small staff, 1 or 2 people, a cook and then a live-in maid. But we have a section of our house that was the maid's quarters that is now our laundry room, and her scullery closet is now a cedar closet. And it is lined with cedar so that we can put our winter clothes. It gets very cold out here. So we put our winter clothing in there and our sleeping bags and things that we don't want moth-eaten that we use during the summer. We put those in the winter. It has no heating or air conditioning. It gets cold in there. Because of where it is, it doesn't get hot. But my goodness. That's the kind of place. He's in a closet. He's in a closet. I don't know if that I can keep doing this, guys. This is breaking my heart. We have to, though. We're on page 8. Let me see. Oh my goodness. No, we're going to do it. We are going to do it. Victim stated that once he was pulled from school, his weekday routine and captivity became brutally consistent for the rest of his life. He stated that he would typically go to sleep around 7:30, depending on what season it was. He stated that he would wake up around 3 to 4:30 and would be awake for the rest of the whole day and night, noting that he did not sleep well. He was let out of his room for a limited time in the morning around 8 a.m. He stated that he was tasked to complete several chores in the house, which may take him between 15 minutes and 2 hours, depending on what he had to do. From there, typically late in the morning, he was brought back to his room where he was locked there for the remainder of the day and through the overnight hours until it was time to get out and do chores again the following day. It's amazing that people will do this to one another. When asked how often this routine was, he stated nearly every day. Stated that on occasion he was let out in the early evening hours briefly. Stated there were times when he would be locked in his room for a whole day at a time, equating to 24 straight hours. He added that on the weekends he would be let out of his room for longer periods of time by his father. He stated that while Sullivan took his sisters to events to see friends, his father would allow him to come out and watch television with him. He stated there were also times when his father would let him go outside with him to work in the yard. He added that the last time he left the property was when he was approximately 14 or 15 years old, stating that he went with his father to dump yard waste. When discussing his father dying, he stated that his captivity and restraint got even worse. Stated that it got to a point where the only time he would ever be let out of the house once his father died was to let the family dog out in the back of the property, stating that it was only about 1 minute a day. Essentially, he was locked in his room between 22 to 24 hours a day. Stated that he was provided up to 2 sandwiches a day. They were typically deli meats, peanut butter, and occasionally tuna or egg salad. Describes his food becoming less and less over time. When asked if he was hungry every day, he stated, "All day, every day, my entire life." Along with a limited food supply, he stated he had the equivalent of about 2 small bottles of water per day. He pointed to water bottles that were there on the table during the interview. When the detective asked the victim why he never spoke with anyone about his experience, he stated that he wanted to, but there was the constant threat of longer lockdowns and further diminishment of food. He describes a life of being mentally conditioned by Sullivan. He stated that the threat was that he would not see the light of day if he told anyone, and knowing that he had little time out of his room to that point, it was not something he could risk. He also stated that he once discovered a gun while cleaning. This added to his fears of being hurt. It was unclear when in his life he discovered the gun. He discussed how much of a normal day consisted of him counting cars as he looked out of his window. He stated that he thought of breaking the window, later learning that there was a storm window that could not be removed. But MV1 stated that, under pain of death, no one was to see me. This is what Sullivan would say to MV1. He said that throughout the years, Sullivan would constantly lead him to believe that she was going to start to unlock his door to let him out, but then she needed to see if she could trust him. Stated that the room being unlocked never happened. He described the evolution of his bathroom use. When he was a young child and he was only being locked in the room during the overnight hours, a training potty chair was left in his room to use. Once he reached his teenage years and then into his adult years, he was forced to use bottles and newspaper to dispose of his waste. He described how after he urinated into a bottle, he would then funnel it into a tube he created with a series of straws and then glide those straws through a hole in the window to empty it. He continued by describing how he defecated. He stated that he placed newspaper on the ground and squatted over to relieve himself. He would then roll the paper up tight with a string he unraveled from old t-shirts and eventually bring it to the kitchen garbage when he was let out to do chores. Knowing that when he was tended to in the ambulance after the fire, the officer and EMT recognized that not only was he emaciated, but there was clearly an issue with his hygiene. He remembered telling the officer that he had not bathed in a year or two. When asked about his bathing habits, he stated when he was in school he would get bathed every other night. Once pulled from school, he stated that bathing would become less and less and less, which ultimately led to him having to attempt to clean himself in his room. He explained that along with the bottle of water he had filled each day for his fluids, he kept one other bottle in his room. He stated that each day he would save a portion of his drinking water into this other bottle. Once that bottle was full, he stated that he would do what he could with that amount of water to bathe himself. Adding that he was not provided any kind of soap, he only had some men's cologne in his room. And when it came to haircuts, he stated Sullivan would cut his hair. Body-worn camera footage shows him with long, thick, matted hair. He stated that up to that point, he had not had a haircut in 3 years. Besides the occasional television viewing with his father on the weekends, he stated that there was no other television viewing. He did not have one in his room. He recalled a time where he briefly, 3 months, 15 years ago, had a small black and white television, but it became unusable due to the advancement in technology. So no analog signals going out. MV1 stated that his only real connection to the outside world was a radio that was kept outside of his bedroom. He described listening to local radio stations. Among these 3 stations, he was able to stay semi-current with world issues. He was able to learn about and follow NASCAR and Yukon basketball. Along with a calendar, he stated that he utilized the radio to keep track of time. Between those 2 resources, he was able to keep track of time and the years. Speaking with MV1 and knowing that his formal education concluded in the 4th grade, which I don't think he graduated from, I think he was polled. He was able to understand everything we spoke about. Each year he stated he was provided approximately 3 to 4 books. He stated that he also had a dictionary. He stated that he would read books and each word he came across that he did not know, he would look it up in the dictionary. It was determined that MV1 had ultimately educated himself. He discussed how he was never allowed to have friends, noting that the only time he was ever allowed to have fun was Halloween. He remembered the last time he was allowed to go trick-or-treating on Halloween when he was 12, recalling his last costume being a firefighter. That one got me. He stated that his sisters were allowed to have friends, but the friends were not allowed over the house, stating he was their secret, stating, "I have been kept a secret my entire life." Regarding other potential visitors to the house, he stated that there was hardly anyone who came to the house, and if someone did come, he was told to not make a sound. Again, the threat of food diminishment and longer lockdowns always being the threat if he did not comply. He added that along with Sullivan and his father knowing of his situation, his 2 half-sisters and a deceased grandmother knew as well, none of which participated in locking him in the room. They were just aware. When asked about SA, or let's say PA, MV1 stated that there was no SA, and he recalled only one instance when he was PA'd. He stated that around 2005, being home alone, he cut out a piece of wood paneling out of the door that he was locked behind. He stated that he was able to sneak out and make his way to the rest of the house where he found food and ate it. When Sullivan discovered he had made his way out of his room, she went up to him and slapped him in the face. From that point on, not only was his door locked, but plywood was secured on both sides of the door so he could not get through the door again. This door was observed in the residence when the search warrants were executed, and there was in fact plywood on each side of the door. During one of the interviews, the victim was shown 2 photos of the residence, and he confirmed which room was his and confirmed that that was the door that secured him in his room. When asked about medical care, he stated that he had not been to a doctor since he was a child. He stated that the only medicine he was ever provided was aspirin. He stated that he had never been to the dentist. Along with seeing his body being absolutely emaciated, it was clear that he had severe tooth decay and no dental treatment in his mouth. He stated that when he ate, pieces of his teeth would break off. He was asked about the day he set the fire. He describes it as being a normal day doing chores in the morning, but this day he was allowed to clean off Sullivan's vehicle. Like every other day, he was given his 2 sandwiches and a snack and sent back to his room, where he was locked until 7 p.m. that night. He stated that he was let out to try and replace a bulb on a small Christmas tree that was on a breakfast bar. When he could not complete the task, he was sent back to the room and locked in. Around 8 p.m., he hears Sullivan's bedroom door close, and he thought, same old, same old. He added that he doesn't remember what time, but did remember making the choice to set the fire. Noting that there wasn't a plan to do so earlier in the day, he stated that he also knew that when he set the fire, he would have to let it go to a point where Sullivan would not be able to put it out, and that the fire department would have to come. MV1 stated that he set the fire using hand sanitizer, printer paper, and a flame from a lighter. He stated that he got the lighter about a year earlier after his father had died. He was allowed some of his deceased father's clothing, and there happened to be a lighter in the old jacket pocket. When asked how he knew the hand sanitizer was flammable, he stated, "I read." He stated that he started the fire on the floor by his door and a stack of games. He added that once the fire got going good, he started to stomp and yell for help. He stated that Sullivan yelled to him asking what he wanted, and he told her fire. When she opened the door, she asked what he did, and he told her that the radio had malfunctioned. He states at this point he was out of it and had collapsed at the top of the stairs. He stated that Sullivan made him get up and go to the downstairs bathroom to wash his face, stating that she did not want the fire department to know about his appearance. He remembers that when the fire department arrived, his sister and boyfriend had arrived as well. He stated that he knew this because he could hear Sullivan yelling to them to get the screwdriver to get the locks off of the door. MV1 concluded by stating that he fell to the ground again with Sullivan yelling at him to get up. He stated that he stayed on the ground and he purposefully didn't get up so the fire department would be forced to get him. Brilliant. So smart. He believed this was the only way out of the situation. So smart. On February 28th, a search warrant and seizure warrant pertaining to all medical records for MV1 at the medical facility was applied for and granted. The same day, Detective Brownell, Detective K. Shea, and Lieutenant M. Torres responded to the medical facility to execute the search warrant. All requested records were provided. The following is a chronological record of the staff's medical notes as they cared for MV1 from his admittance on 2/18 through the execution of the search warrant on 2/28. Records show that he was admitted on the 18th at 2:51 a.m. Due to the threat of respiratory failure, he was intubated. It was documented that the medical facility showed no medical records on file. This means that any medical facility that shared the same system as this one showed no history. An early exam of the victim described him as, what is that? Is that pronounced Kachetic or Kaketic? I don't know. And appears younger than his stated age. Kachetic, let's say, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering it, or cachexia is also referred to as wasting syndrome. It has to do with significant unplanned weight loss and deterioration of muscle mass. This condition is seen in individuals who are suffering from chronic diseases such as heart disease or advanced cancer. A victim was described as being near starvation. Continuing with earlier reports and observations from medical staff, it is documented that on the 18th, the victim is severely malnourished with a body mass index of 11. Speaking with medical staff for the victim, this is about half of what it should be. It was also explained that anything under 16 is considered starvation and anything under 13 is life-threatening. It is also noted in this report that refeeding syndrome needs to be avoided. Medical staff at the facility stated that refeeding syndrome is a life-threatening condition brought upon by severe malnutrition, whereby introduction of foods and fluids can have fatal consequences due to the fact that the body cannot process the intake properly. His body is not equipped to handle or break down the nutrients. This can have a domino effect of electrolyte imbalance, which will lead to heart abnormality, which will lead to heart failure. Records show that once intubated, he begins to speak with staff and is immediately providing them with information about his situation, stating that he has been abused at home and not allowed to leave for several years. Staff noted their concern of a hostage situation. As the medical reports continue, it notes that the victim is extremely thin and weighs 31.2 kilograms, approximately 68.7 pounds. He is 5'9". MV1 continued to speak with staff about his situation, which was consistent with what he had initially stated to officers. He stated that he had set the fire because, he states, "I wanted my freedom." He stated that he had been locked in his room since he was 11 years old. Staff notes that at this point, the victim is fully oriented. His thoughts are clear and he is absent of ideations. As staff continues to speak with the victim, he talks with a constricted effect about what he missed over the past 20 years. It's documented that over the past months, his mood was angry. He was always hungry and he has been tossing and turning in his sleep for the past few years. Here the victim opens up about his life, stating that he was pulled from school in 4th grade because his parents were tired of DCF being called on the family because he was always hungry. He explained that he was always asking other students for food, taking other students' food, and eating out of the garbage. When asked, he stated that he doesn't know basic technology and described spending his days reading and watching cars pass by his window. Note that at the end of Detective Pesci's interview, Detective Pesci attempted to help the victim work an iPad, and it was clear that he had no concept of how it worked. Evaluations of the victim noted that he had decreased ability to use his arms for pushing and pulling, decreased ability to use legs for bridging and pushing, and an impaired ability to control his trunk for mobility. His muscle tone was abnormal with decreased flexibility and strength. He had decreased endurance and activity tolerance and impaired balance with impaired motor function. He has bilateral knee contractures, a condition where the knee joints become stiff and cannot extend. Severe muscle wasting and severe subcutaneous fat loss is noted in the clavicle and temple. And basically, you can see his bones. During an assessment for mental health, the victim tested positive for PTSD and depression. During these assessments, he noted that he was forced to urinate in plastic bottles that he would empty by dumping out of his window. And when he defecated, he would do so on the floor using newspaper. When asked, he could not remember the last time he showered. He's noted as being developmentally delayed, at this time having an adolescent cognitive level. When provided a task to complete, he demonstrated difficulty problem-solving, multitasking, and sequencing. He became frequently overwhelmed and needed verbal cues to continue. It is noted that he was unaware how to use a microwave. During Detective Pesci's interview on the 21st, he photographed the victim in his current condition. See attached appendix for pictures, hereby incorporated into the affidavit for reference. We won't have those for privacy reasons. They are labeled A, B, C, and D. These photos show his condition on the 21st, which demonstrate his malnutrition, frailty, and dental health. On February 27th, his uncle, Kurt Sullivan, responded to the Waterbury Police Department and provided a sworn statement regarding the victim. Kurt stated that he had not seen him since 2004 or 2005. He remembers going to the address for Christmas Eve for a few years in a row until the family pushed him and his wife away. He remembered that MV1 was always skinny, meek, and mild-mannered. He recalled trying to ask the victim questions, but Kimberly Sullivan interfered. Kurt stated that he attempted to reach out over time, but there was no response. He stated that, concerned for MV1, he stated that about 10 years ago he spoke with a private investigator who suggested going to vital statistics to look for a death certificate. In regard to his condition, Kurt stated that when he visited the victim in the hospital after the fire, he stated, "I was shocked. He looks like a Holocaust survivor." The detectives conducted a police department in-house database check for MV1, which did not reveal any police interactions within the city since April 1st, 2005 and April 18th, 2005. Additional law enforcement database inquiries for MV1 did not reveal any records for MV1. An NCIC collect check and then redacted. Up to this point in the investigation, detectives have been able to locate any recent school history past 2005. The two reports on file from April 1st and 18th of 2005 are reports to police regarding the well-being of the child. The reports note that DCF had been sent to check on MV1 and that staff at the school he had been attending was contacting different agencies to check on MV1. So, yeah, when I was saying that police officer's statement was bold, it's in the affidavit that they had reached out to police. Okay, during the course of the investigation, 2 search and seizure warrants were applied for and granted on the 27th and the 28th. The first is for the arson. The first for the arson investigation, the second for the abuse investigation. During the execution of each search warrant, photos were taken by the Waterbury Police Forensic Division. The room where the fire had started, the victim's room, measured approximately 9 feet by 8 feet with an angled ceiling. Photographs of the door to this room and the door jamb were taken. On the door jamb, it appeared that you could see holes from previous locks that were utilized in the past. You could also see the locks that were currently on it were functional and clearly meant to keep someone in, not someone out of the room. You could also see that there was plywood attached to each side of the door, not only to reinforce it, but to prevent any tampering of the outer locks. The door jamb and the door were taken as evidence. Based on the facts and circumstances contained herein, the affiant believes that probable cause has been established. Yeah. And respectfully requests that an arrest warrant be issued for Kimberly Sullivan, 322-68, charging her with assault in the first degree, kidnapping in the second degree, unlawful restraint in the first degree, cruelty to persons, and reckless endangerment in the first degree. Let it be noted that each charge carries the date range of 3/7/96 through 2/17/25 due to the fact that MV1 states that the abuse began around the age of 3 years old up until the day MV1 set the fire. It was rough, guys. That was rough. Goodness. I don't know that I have it in me to go through your comments. Sorry, but I did see some supers came in, which I'm deeply grateful for taking care of me. Mina says it's not much, but thank you for having such a kind heart. It is much, Mina, and thank you very, very much. Adstein 631, Gavin, this is so hard to hear, and I can't imagine how difficult it is telling these stories. We love and appreciate all you teach us about being good humans here. Well, listen, I do my best. I deeply appreciate what you're saying. I don't even think that I think this is just being part of humanity. You don't do this to people. You don't do this to people you hate. You definitely do not do it to people that you love. I mean, I'm not saying that she loved him. I'm just saying, like, the whole spectrum of people in your life. This this is how a normal person reacts. And I am, I need a break. I need a break. I'm so glad that you guys spend this time with me. Grateful that you're here. I'll be back on Monday. Just a couple of quick things. Just remember that you can reach out to me. I'm glad Jess already did. I will check it. I think I'm going to need a break, Jess. I'll reach back out to you tomorrow. But if you ever want to reach me, that is the way to do it. Clicking this little icon, it will bring you to this form. Clicking this little fishy will take you to the fish tank, where we hang out on Facebook. If you're on Facebook and you'd like to join our group, please join our merry little band of fishies. We like to talk true crime in there and share things, cases that we're looking at, and opinions. And we like to keep it classy and like to keep it dignified. Please join us there. Remember that I, on Patreon, wrote this up about trying to get public records in crazy states like the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where it just feels like every single elected official or bureaucrat works against getting you. It works against transparency. I'm a little frustrated about it. I do think that I'm going to lose. I've got a two-prong effort going on right now. On Monday, I am going to be able to inspect the records that I want, but I do not have permission to obtain copies of them. But I expect that I will lose one of my battles, and I am hopeful that I will win the other, though it's not guaranteed. So go check that out if you're interested in trying to get public records. I'm just really down right now. I'm so sorry for this young man. He's not a young man. I just keep thinking of him as a child. He's 32. He's a man. But just so sorry for him. But we'll be back on Monday. We'll be rejuvenated. We'll be recharged. Thank you, all of you who joined me in the live chat. Thank you to the Rewatch crew, the Catch Up crew. You guys are amazing. I bid you adieu until next time. Until then, please take care of yourselves and take care of each other. All right? Good night. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw, please consider subscribing. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.